And we are live. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm TJ.
And I'm Kent.
Welcome to episode 14.
And I'm Phil.
Welcome to episode 14 of the Sling'N Led podcast. We are joined this evening by Phil Groff of Vigr Training. Phil, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Absolutely, man. So one of the things that we like to do as part of this show is give our guests an opportunity to kind of explain who the hell they are. So aside from what people can find out about you on your website, why don't you take a moment and explain to everybody who is Phil Groff?
Yeah. So the about me, the cool thing I say about myself and the lies, the truths you make up and you write on the internet to tell everybody. Pretty simple. I'm a full-time firearms trainer. Jumped into that full-time last summer. Before that was working in the firearms industry at a large retail firearms operation for about the last 4.5 years. Full-time law enforcement and Marine before. Marine, cop, guns, teach, Mongo, smash, you name it, man. That's me in a quick nutshell.
Well,
awesome.
Damn it, I think you're going to fit in just fine right here on the Sling'N Led podcast. So with that, I'd like to focus, at least my line of questioning, on one of your specialties, and I know Kent has attended this training with you before, and that is your vehicle defense classes, right? And one of the reasons that I wanted to specifically talk to you about this is because one of my guilty pleasures on a Friday afternoon when I'm waiting for that 5 o'clock hour to roll around is I love to play road rage videos on YouTube while I'm finishing up my day. And one of the reasons I do that is because it kind of gives me an opportunity to study human behavior. So for those that may not know, you can live a completely peaceful life. You don't go out to the bar, you don't go out to the nightclubs, you're kind of a homebody, maybe even live in a rural area where there's not a huge dense population. One of the few places that I think you're the most likely to be engaged in some type of violent, aggressive incident is in an act of road rage. Maybe you drive like an asshole, maybe you made an honest mistake and cut someone off and they flew off the handle. But I think all of us are equally likely to be placed into that type of a situation. So with that, what are some of the key principles that you like to cover in your vehicle defense classes? Can you tell us more about that class just in general?
Yeah, for sure, man. You make a great point. People, when they're inside their cars, they get that sense of power. And a lot of times that takes the ability for them to make solid decisions. And like you said, you end up in situations that, you're living an active lifestyle of situational awareness and spatial awareness and everything everybody talks about all the time. You get in your car and you're like, man, I'm behind a couple tons of steel and death, and screw you. I can be rude. I can flip you off. And they find themselves in those situations a lot. It's also a predictable pattern of movement getting in and out of your car. And at the end of the day, your car is something someone may want. We see a lot of violent carjackings and violent robberies occur in a vehicle because that vehicle is a piece of property. The overwhelming majority of crime that happens, particularly amongst strangers, not talking known party assailants or domestic situations, which make up a huge chunk of the violence. Not that if you have a domestic incident around a car, it's not the same thing, but stranger violence, if you will, are almost exclusively crimes of property. There are some other assaultive crimes that happen out of there, but if they want to take your shit, they want your car, it's something valuable. So what I focus on in my open enrollment armed vehicle defense class, I do teach two very different classes between open enrollment and the law enforcement because they're very, very different potentials for what's going to happen there. Really focus on what's going to happen, in and around a vehicle, not necessarily, while you're driving that. One of my first core principles, I teach them, I call the armed vehicle defense matrix. And the first principle of that is skinny pedal on the right. So you've got a roughly 30 plus million grain bullet. You use that. I don't teach that in my classes because the cars we're using are dead. But driving away from trouble, that's your first best bet. And then beyond that, we just talk about what it looks like to fight your way out of your car if you don't have the ability to drive that away, what it looks like to fight in and around vehicles, utilizing them for what they are in context of cover, concealment, and really what they are at the base of it is a big fixed object that humans gravitate to. So we just discuss some of the movement patterns and what that looks like put it all into the context of, like you said, our big ones are road rage that goes south, counter carjacking, and personal assaults that occur entering and exiting the can't talk there for a second. Entering and exiting the vehicle. So you're at a store, you're at the bank, you're at an area where you may have known commodities that you're looking to take. You're at your place of business. If it's a personal attack, they know you're going to go to your vehicle to leave that place of business. So those are kind of the big three threats that we focus on in that class, and then working from there. Again, taking everything from the step that this car doesn't drive. We discussed that a lot. I wish I had cars that ran and I could get a little bit of banging and clanging in with the cars and talk about that. There's other dudes out there that have the facility on that type of training. That's not what my course is about, but everything up to and after that. So the car doesn't run anymore. The car isn't working. You're not running the car. The car is disabled from a road rage incident. And then you're going to fight from that standpoint.
Outstanding. So I'm curious, and by all means, we don't want to put you in a position where you kind of give away your trade secrets or your secret sauce, as we like to say. But if somebody were to come to your class, somebody that might not be familiar, no law enforcement background, completely civilian, understands, the basic fundamentals of firearms and stuff like that, is certainly at a level where they should attend a level of training such as those that you provide. What are some of the things that folks at home can maybe do to prep themselves mentally? Maybe it's a particular skill or something that's relatively fundamental or rudimentary that they can try to work on themselves before they come to your class. This way it kind of combats one of those common challenges that you end up facing.
Yeah, I give everybody the same boring answer on this, and it is the better you are at running all the aspects of your gun, the manipulative cycle of your firearm. It's not a super marksmanship intensive class, but you certainly need to have a fundamental understanding of marksmanship. But I tell people manipulation cycle, be comfortable with a draw. I'll teach you a seated draw, the little nuances that are off that, but be comfortable with a draw, be comfortable with clearing malfunctions, with reloading that gun. Be comfortable with moving a little bit around your firearm, even if that's just single step movements, real short movements and around that. The better you are at all of that, the more mental bandwidth you're going to be able to apply to something that you perceive as something new. Anytime you get into specialty training, like around vehicles, the two big areas I see it in is when we train people in vehicle-based settings and when we train them in interior movement settings. Then all of a sudden you see where someone's default level of firearm skill really sits. People, the better they are just running their gun. I can usually take a look at a student, watch the way they handle their gun during their first initial load, and have an idea about how successful they're going to be within the course and the skill sets presented. There's nothing happening. There's no secret ninja techniques. I'm not out there zero rolling or doing anything crazy like that. There's no wild shit like that. It's solid fundamentals. It's understanding movement related to those fundamentals. So the more bandwidth you have to apply to all of that, because you're not having to think about how do I run my gun, the more you're going to get out of an individual course.
Gotcha. Understood. So, Kent, I actually want to put you on the spot a little bit. Having gone through Phil's training yourself, what is probably one of the most valuable lessons from a fundamental aspect that you took away from his class?
Besides the fact that I-7 and 17 are in fact two distinct targets, and I shouldn't continuously fucking drill rounds into I-7 while he tells me on camera that I'm shooting the wrong target for about 11 minutes. Besides that, what I took, and this is not the first time I've taken training from Phil. The why is a huge component, right? So whether we talk to Jedi about why the gross sight picture works at 3 yards on a red dot, or whether we talk to a guy who spends his time making sure his fellow officers stay alive around the car, when he explains to you the why of whether we're talking about what pillar to be behind or whether we're talking about how to prioritize getting out of the vehicle, how to manipulate your muzzle as you're getting out of the vehicle, how to distinguish whether it's time to fight or whether it's time to drive, and the answer is mostly time to drive, right? And the proximity of threats. There was a lot of workshop to this class. This wasn't just ready up drills for 2 days and everybody high-fived and yeah, we blew 1,000 rounds and we made some really expensive noise and we feel cool. There was some serious seminar shit going on. And Phil really took a lot of time to delve into the why of the subject matter. So, man, no matter how much I can preach talking about, hey, don't crowd your cover, then he fucking slams on the trunk and yells, you're getting shot, go. And there's my big fat bear looking ass standing way too close to cover, right? And you realize you're like, holy crap, this happens to you mentally, whether you're prepared for it or not. You just make those mistakes. And he's good at stopping you in the middle of a drill. This is something I've seen him do that I haven't seen a lot of other people do. He certainly did it for me, not to me, for me more than once. But he did it for others as well, where he would stop them and go, hey, what are you seeing right now? No, you're good. Don't holster your gun. Just tell me what you're seeing. Here, stand here. Take 3 steps back and 1 to the left, and now tell me what you're seeing. And just to give them that workshop and that opportunity was super valuable. And the other thing he does is he mixes at least in our class, we had an eclectic group of students, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean we had a wide variety of skill set, experience, and age and physical and all kinds of things. And everybody left that class pretty psyched and feeling good about what they got. So that's a mark of a good trainer for sure. That's what I would say.
Outstanding. So, Phil, let's shift gears a little bit. Let's talk more about everything you do offer. So you did mention Leo, you did mention open enrollment. So why don't you go ahead and tell the folks at home and those listening on the podcast, about all the different training you offer. Obviously, it's going to be more than just vehicle defense. So I'll give you the floor to talk about that.
Yeah, man. So my program's split. My open enrollment programs, I'm down. I just teach 4. That's it. So I teach basically I call R3 defensive handgun and R3 defensive rifle. Those are both 2-day classes. The 3 R's are relevant, realistic, and recent. Just a conceptual thing I do. That's kind of my base handgun, defensive handgun program and defensive rifle program. Then I've got an open enrollment grounded and wounded and an open enrollment armed vehicle defense. In my grounded and wounded class, I also have an LE component of that, same as the AVD. That is a 2-day. It was formerly a 1-day in 2020. It's jumped into a 2-day program for open enrollment as well. That is your classic "this sucks" class. So that is working to learning to fight through compromised positions and from the ground and working my way up, and then also compromised ability. So that's probably my second most popular program is that grounded and wounded. Just getting folks to understand, they're injured. I have some opinions about the way that a lot of the industry trains that, and a lot of it is not really effective. And do the old wounded wing training, and we do one-handed drills, when in fact the biology doesn't support that. If you are injured in a fight, you have something available. So come up with a bunch of different ways that we shake out and we compromise those abilities from strength, range of motion, dexterity, and we go from there. Beyond that, everything else I have is on the LE side, but not too much. My primary for my AVD. I have a grounded and wounded. I've got a high risk patrol class. 2020, I'm actually kicking in 2 new classes, picking up the RDS trend. So just running an end user 2-day end user program for officers running RDS in their agencies. Not that dots aren't welcome in all my classes, they are, but this one's going to specifically focus and take a look at that transition for agencies who are either running dots in their department or they're dot curious. And then the course I'm really excited about in 2020 on the LE side is something that I incorporate in all of my courses, but I'm going to put it specifically to a program called, it's a relevant movement class. It's a 2-gun fighting movement class, and it's all about actually applying what we see in real fights happening, not the way that a lot of folks train on the range to train movement, but really how do people really move in fights? What does it look like? LE specific class, but the lessons are universal. What does that fight really look like? What does that movement pattern look like? And then how do we effectively structure drills to train that? What are our natural body responses in that fight? And then how do we effectively train that? And it's not, at least in my experience, it's never been the, walking 10 yards to 5 yards and and a nice slow little Groucho. It just doesn't often work like that in a lot of contexts. So that's a cool one I got coming up. I've got some other custom contract stuff I do. Background in my real passion in the LE side was in SWAT, so I do some custom course work with agencies. I do some instructor development work, but try to keep the course catalog focused to what I've got experience in, what I think I can really offer somebody a high level of skill and aptitude in putting off. Stay in my proverbial lane, man. So, I'm not out there teaching classes I don't know well enough. I'm happy to refer you to guys that do, guys and gals that are good at that. So if it's a gig I'm not good at, I'm gonna give you some names. I'll tell you where to go and maybe where to avoid. So I'm never short on opinions in that regard.
Yeah, I don't think any of us are. But with that, dude, that sounds like a fantastic repertoire that you have for your training classes. There's something to be said about guys that actually know how to stay in their lane. I know that it's certainly not a sentiment lost on Kent and myself. If you're not good at something, have the integrity to admit that and refer, where it may be applicable. But that also, I think, gives instructors an ability to really hone their craft, right? So hats off to you on that one. Sounds like you've got a fantastic understanding of your own capabilities and limitations, respectively, and I applaud you for that. But Kent, you had some questions for Phil, so I'm going to shut up for a little bit and let you take over.
What about the essential? What about the essential hair wax class? What happened to that? Like, what the fuck?
Hey, man. Listen, don't about locks, man. Hey, he's deployed right now. He's overseas. He and his brother are both deployed overseas.
Oh, really?
So, yeah. They're both air guard guys. So they're loading planes or doing some kind of air guard importantness.
Wow.
Somewhere.
I've never seen an instructor on the range with better looking hair throughout the entire 2 days.
Hey, I mean, I wasn't in the Navy, so I wasn't even close to being a Navy SEAL, but I try to, what little bit of hair I got left, and I never thought I'd be a hair spokesperson type dude. And those guys gave me, Miz and the guys over Locks literally gave me hundreds of tins of samples for this year, and I was hawking hair wax like a Long Island beauty salon owner. It's pretty cool. Not something I thought I would see in my lifetime, but it happened. That's
really cool. I myself am planning on being the before picture in a bunch of weight loss photos, so we can.
Yeah.
But so in all seriousness, you are not one of the few, but you're certainly an instructor who rides the line between professional duty trainers and everyday civilians. And I've had the privilege of seeing you in two separate teaching settings. One that had no LE, so, your R3 defensive rifle was just teaching a couple dudes over at West Shore how to run rifles better, with very little scenario, very little anything else. Just, hey, here's applicably how these guns run and why what I think matters. And then in AVD, although it wasn't open enroll and it wasn't LEO class, there was certainly more. Forgive my turn of phrase, but look, motherfucker, we're in a fight right now, right?
Yeah. More context driven for sure.
More context for sure. So, what do you see as the primary difference as a trainer between training professional duty students and those of us regular Joes who hopefully never need this shit? And P.S. I hope the pros never need it either. I hope y'all freaking write tickets to the Amish in their buggies and never have to do anything real. No offense, but I hope you never ever have to do anything hard at work. But chances are you probably will and have and do. So, what do you see as the primary difference, and what does your approach look like differently?
Yeah, my biggest thing, and from taking classes with me with both the open enrollment and the law enforcement, I don't want to use the word mission, but the goals are very, very different in those classes. One side is being paid to be there. They're going to go to those calls. They're going to own that problem through to some form of a resolution. There isn't an option, you roll up I shouldn't say there isn't. It is an option. It's not a great option for cops, but for the most part, professional force users are going to that fight. If they get in that fight, they own that problem, and that problem becomes their primary focus. Whereas open enrollment, concealed carriers, private citizens, your primary focus is the safety of yourself if you're alone, and yourself and your family if you're in a group setting. That's your only goal. It's not to arrest. It's not to detain. Your goal is to maximize your safety. Now, in both cases, the goals, the path to maximizing your safety is through quickly, violently, and effectively winning that fight if that's applicable. If what's applicable is smashing the skinny pedal on the right, driving away as fast as you possibly can, then that's okay. Cops get that option, but I always tell guys, I tell the cops when I train them, they have the skinny pedal option, but the skinny pedal option changes in them at some point there's going to be a U-turn involved. Like, they're not going to be able to just drive away. Whew, that was a close one. Damn, I'm not going down that block again. Them dudes shoot at me down there and never go back. That's not the way that game's played for those guys. So the biggest difference in approach when I look at my LE training programs and my open enrollment is really, what is their purpose? What is their context? What is their likely fight? Not the fantasy crazy. If you ever shot IDPA, not any of the bullshit IDPA about 6 ISIS terrorists surprise you when you're on the shitter, and you have to retrieve your gun from your pants around your ankles. I use as an example, I shot a stage like that in a New York State match one year. They literally had a toilet there with our gun in our holster, and you had pretend suspenders you had to put on. None of that nonsense. But what's it going to look like for you? And for a private citizen, that's going to look like, what's a fight going to look like when you're loading your kid in the car seat, and everybody lives in super conditioned fuchsia all the time, and we kid ourselves. Bullshit. The kid's nagging and screaming. They're throwing chicken nuggets at your head. You're loading them in, and you're like, not now, and just trying to get in the car and get the hell home. And the next thing you know, you get punched in the back of the head, and somebody's shoving you into your car at gunpoint. That's a real fight, and your door gets splintered at 2 a.m. and 4 dudes rushing in your door. That's a real fight. And we got to prepare, and that's what we're looking to prepare for. Not the crazy ass 6 ISIS terrorists rushing your local mall nonsense, but what do our real fights look like? So the biggest difference, I said it 6 times, but man, it's context. It's what they're doing. That's why I believe there are a lot of trainers out there that will start off in the professional force users, and my fellow officers, and even my fellow vets out there. One of the biggest mistakes I see, I shouldn't say it's a mistake, as long as the trainer and the folks he's training with have an understanding, it's okay. But one of the biggest problems I see is they take non-context that's applicable to them, or a context that doesn't work for them, and they train that. While maybe enjoyable, kitting up and playing fantasy camp and learning bounding Overwatch and learning live fire, break contact drills, that's not really that applicable to us. It's a hell of a lot of fun, but what do we do it for? And a lot of vets and particularly law enforcement trainers really have a trouble sometimes breaking those two apart, breaking apart what is a law enforcement mission set, and then they just slap on the term open enrollment and teach the exact same class. And it doesn't work that way. I think they have to be completely different, if nothing other than from the mentality. And the physical skills will overlap and will mesh over. If I invited you to roll through a law enforcement ABD, there aren't like secret things I'm holding out in that class that I don't teach in open enrollment. You're going to get the same stuff, the same guts. The bones are the same. The meat, the fat, the flesh is the same. The clothing might be a little bit different. We're going to dress it up a little different because it's a different context.
Yeah, I think I mentioned to you prior to taking AVD from you that I had taken a vehicle class elsewhere where we were put in 2-man teams and sent on calls. I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? They're like, oh, call it in on the radio. I'm like, I don't have a radio. There's nobody for me, and just the whole thing. And then of course on the other side,
what's better than calling in a radio is and I've done this before. Sometimes like the AVD class, I stopped doing it because we wrapped it force on force instead now, but I used to carry a little handheld GPS. I'd charge up a little handheld GPS because it had a keypad you had to touch on. That way I could actually physically make them touch in 911 on the little GPS touchscreen. And it used to be funny because we'd have them make phone calls, make the 911 dispatch call, and then look at the actual GPS device and see how many of them actually nailed 911.
Mm-hmm.
And it was all amazing how many were 924441111 or 922222222 or and would actually miss the 911 on a touchscreen. So kind of ancient technology. All our under 30 crowd are now going, what's a GPS that like a standalone, like you mean like your phone? Like no. I mean like a GPS, man. Like a plugger. Get out of my face.
Garmin.
Yeah.
It takes batteries. They won't get it.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. Can I plug this thing in?
Yeah.
You can if you want to watch it spontaneously combust.
Yeah, exactly right.
So another thing that struck me from AVD was that you've started to grow, and this has less to do with AVD and just more to do with you as a trainer. You had a really diverse group of people out at that class. And you had a lot of folks who had been, not just myself, like clearly I'm a training junkie idiot who gets paid like $3 to talk about stuff on the internet occasionally. So of course I'm going to take more than one of your classes, but you had regular everyday people who were in your third or fourth or however manyth class. Talk a little bit about the training path for a civilian and how you've, because obviously you've had some success with bringing some of those folks along, and they, many of them said to me, "Oh, I've taken X number of Phil's classes," and I was impressed to see that based on how many firearms classes have you taken? 5. Awesome. Where'd you take them? Phil, and Phil. And I was really impressed by that because obviously you had an impact on them, and I know you. This is not talking about you're not farming students, because I know you stood there and recommended a million other people. I watched you do that, but you obviously struck a chord with some people. So talk a little bit about your progression of a student and how you've started some of them from the ground up.
Yeah, so I mean, I've been fortunate. I've had some really, really awesome men and women that have trained with me, and I think that I always look at it, if I do my job well, and at the end of every class, I do a little riff and a rant on, if you like training with me, I would love to come back and have you be my training partner again. Come through another class. But I also want you to go get some diversity and hear other folks' opinion on the subject. So I always view it as kind of the ultimate compliment. If folks are willing to spend their money, and that's important to me. I'm paying my bills with this job, and that's cool. I appreciate that. But I think it's a lot more impactful to me that they're willing to spend 2 days of their life, in some cases 3 or 4 if they've got travel. They found that time, because ultimately, at the end of the day, man, we're all going into the ground, and ain't a cent going with us. So the money's there. We're going to spend it. We're going to piss it away. We're going to stuff it under a mattress, whatever we're going to do. But our time's super valuable. So if a dude felt my time was worthy enough to come back and train with me again, I think it's pretty awesome. The progression that I see, I've taken some folks through some early private lessons that were a little bit of cold feet to jump into a formal class, up through to taking, multiple classes. And they'll often start off with a base program, typically a handgun, but sometimes they base out in a rifle program, and then start looking for more of the contextual based training, come into AVD or ground and wounded, and start learning some of the new things that they've got going on, and expanding their own skill set. And usually if I know I'm really hitting it well and I'm sparking their interest in training, if I'm not unlike a lot of trainers, it's very much, if you get that first really good trainer and you go, man, that guy or that gal's really shit hot. They're a great trainer. I'm going to stick with them. At some point you get enough of a spark that you go, I want to see what else is out there. So I think kind of the biggest compliment is they come back to me, but they also get enough of a fire lit under them that they also go out and seek and say, I'm going to try some other things. I'm going to diversify. I get emails all the time or calls or texts, and they'll be like, hey, man, I went out and I took a Dark Angel med class, or I went and joined my local jiu-jitsu gym, and, being a white belt sucks, and I get my ass kicked, and this is terrible, but it's awesome terrible. And little stuff like that, and that's really cool, and I like to see that. I don't want to be anyone's sole guru. I don't have all the answers or even the majority of them. I got one little piece, and the speech I give, I got a thimble full of experience, man. It's like the size of a mouse. And that's just a tiny little bit of my own personal experience. And I'll happily share that when it's appropriate and it makes sense. But what's key, and I think in any good trainer, is that they take their own experiences and fuse them out with all the folks that they train with, and constantly learn. And a great trainer not only is an effective communicator, but is also an effective regurgitator, if you will, and can take others' experience, repackage it, spin it into a nice palatable bite, and serve it back to everybody they got going on. And in that way, we become cooperative in our training, which is a hell of a lot better than anyone. I always say this: you take the most gunfightiest, death-dealing ninja killer in domestic law enforcement, and that person doesn't have so many fights under their belt that they have every answer to every scenario. They just don't. So we got to pool our experience. We got to pool our knowledge.
No, absolutely. You do a great job with that. And there's a cool question in chat that I'll let TJ get to here in a second. But while we're on the dovetail and on the subject, one of the things I love to see about fellow trainers and fellow teachers is when guys take other people's classes, and girls, right? And you and I had the privilege of sharing the range both as students, relay buddies. Even you got to show me up on relay 1, and I got to be on relay 2 and fucking roll the blooper reel, which is cool. But I know for sure that you took at least one other dude's class, because I hosted Scott Jedlinski from MSP, and I looked at the class roster and I went, well, holy shit, look at there. Here comes Phil. And he's on the hot list of people that are going to show up to the class, which is awesome. So and you don't have to say Scott if it's not the answer clearly, but who's been your best recent class that you've taken that you went out? Because I know it's not just him. I know you've been other places.
Yeah. This year, I'd say that was this year. I would say Scott was my best class this year, but I got a chance back to train with a mentor of mine again, Mike Seeklander. Training with Mike is always rock solid, and really, really good time training with him. This year was tough, man. I didn't get a lot. Scott was I'm trying to roll my Rolodex here. Yeah, Scott was my only class I got to this year. So we'll see, man. 2020, I'm going to get back out and train with Craig Douglas in 20. He's short list. Still like to get down and train with Frank Proctor. Haven't done that yet. Frank's not traveling. Well, I guess he is traveling again now. Word has it. So we'll see how that shakes out. But there's a lot of great dudes out there, man.
Cool. TJ, do you want to hit him with Jeff's question? Because that's $1 million question right there. I really like that.
Yeah, I think it is. So I'm going to reiterate, or I'm going to ask the question, but I'm going to add on to this as well, because I think there's some additional questions that can be asked here. So the question being posted in chat is, who can you recommend for a combat vet to go to for his or her first training class, civilian class? Now, I want to preface that, or at least add to that with, while you might have a preferred instructor that you would recommend, what are some additional qualities that a combat veteran can look for in a civilian instructor?
Okay. Yeah, man. So I think it kind of goes to a question I get asked a lot, and I'll answer it kind of similar. And that is, how do you vet your trainers? Like everybody talks about, vet your trainers, be smart about who you're looking to train with. And how do you go about doing that? And the biggest thing I say there is start locally and do your best to try to get a hold of someone who knows that trainer and can give you some firsthand information and knowledge, specifically for vets looking to come into the training game, and combat vets. Excuse me. I tell guys, I think the biggest thing I would say there is seek out somebody that meets the criteria, that you can talk to and has solid training, has reputable training, but also gives you some confidence that they can speak your language. And that's not to say that's not a knock, and that's not to say that you have to have this type of experience, that type of experience, this type of a unit, but just some similar backgrounds can sometimes make effective education easier and a little bit more painless. But I tell guys, start local and try to get a hold of folks. If you know anybody that's trained, if you don't, take a look at what everybody puts out online, what they consume, see how you feel about them. Instructors and an ability, if an instructor can effectively convey information, that's awesome. If he can do that while communicating to you in a way that makes sense and is meaningful to you, that's even better. So look at what these folks put out on the internet. Most instructors are out there, even if they don't sprechen Sie Facebook or want to do anything else or YouTube it, you're going to find something about them somewhere that'll give you an insight into their style and what they're going to be able to do for you. So yeah, man, I think the biggest thing is try to get referrals, talk to somebody that's trained with them, start local, start big, and don't pick your trainers based on what unit they served in. That would be the only other thing I would say, because there are dudes out there, there are Delta Cats and Dev Group guys that are 100,000 times the death dealing, killing ninja and warriors that I could ever dream of being, but they may not be effective communicators. And there are guys out there that have never served in the military, have never been law enforcement, that are outstanding instructors, outstanding communicators, and can get that job done just as effectively. It's about personality and it's about solid information transfer.
Excellent response. And as a acknowledgement to the advice you've just given, Jeffrey Ramsey, the guy who posted this question, is actually my brother as well. His response is, so Thunder Ranch is what you're telling him. So,
so he wants to go to Thunder Ranch.
Yeah.
So, hey, man, I tell you what, I've never trained with Clint. I've never trained at Thunder Ranch, but this is what I'll throw out there. He's one of those cats where I trained with, you talk about names, Kent, you asked me earlier about some names. Unfortunately, he's not with us anymore, but when I trained with Pat Rogers, Pat was a phenomenal instructor, and I didn't learn anything new in Pat's class. I really didn't. I didn't learn a new technique I had never seen before. I wasn't wowed with the latest and greatest whiz bang, but the amount of knowledge you took away just soaking in the dude's experience, time he's had behind the gun, both going all the way back through Vietnam, through the heyday when he was NYPD, to teaching as long as he had at a high level. I would imagine that the experience you'd catch at Thunder Ranch, if you take a class with Clint, you're there as much for the story and the cult of personality. You're going to get solid instruction out of it, but you're getting a shitload of personality on top of it, and probably worth your admission and then some. Plus, it's gorgeous out west, man. Why wouldn't you want to go out there?
Yeah, I'll be perfectly candid. I would pay the class fee just to sit at the table while he yells at everyone.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. That's how it works. So, I mean, it's not taking anything away, and I don't mean to be too colorful, but I mean the hell with it. You guys heard I was a Marine, so you're just going to get it. I would have paid the class fee just to listen to Pat Rogers tell the story about shooting a guy in the dick, because he had a phenomenal story about a gunfight he was involved in, and as crass as that is to say that, it had applicable, and he was a great storyteller, and much like you pay the fee to listen to Clint give you his thoughts. That was a lot like listening to Pat relay that experience, and then damned if he didn't wrap it around to a realistic, hey man, this is a legit lesson from this fight. This is what I learned from this fight. This is what I want you to take away from this fight, as we're all picking ourselves up off the floor laughing at his story. So there is a lot to be said. Two great examples of guys that have been in the game a long time, have experience, but both phenomenal conveyors of information. And there's, in the training industry, listen, if you're just going to go out in the training industry and be vanilla, even if you give good information, you're not going to go very far with just a flat. I mean, you better be damn good on a gun if you have no personality. And I can't think of any high-level trainers that have no personality and no personability and ability to train the gun. I can think of guys that are better than others, but you got to have something. And then there are guys that have just an absolute metric shit ton of personality to go along with what they're teaching. And those guys, I mean, it's at the end of the day, for a lot of us in the open enrollment side and even on the LE side, some of this it's the dirty secret nobody wants to talk about, but I'll out it right now. Some of it's just pure straight up entertainment. It's fun. It's the same as when you're a kid, you're bugging your parents to go to space camp, or you want to go to the baseball camp. And I mean, that's the grown up version of that. There's some fun. Yeah, there's deadly serious context to it, but if all you ever do is apply that death dealing deadly serious context to all your training, you won't hang in the training game long. So it's fun, man. Have fun and be yourself and let your personality come through in your training.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I like to tell my people that if nothing else, you're going to get 45 minutes of sit down comedy because I'm too fat to stand up. So, fuck. Like it, but it's nice to what I will say is what you will notice, Jeff, and anybody else who's listening, is every single person who I look back on and say, I'm glad I trained with that person, had a personality, and there's I gained as much from Phil standing around after R3 defensive rifle on range 8 at West Shore, bullshitting about the training business after class as I did in class. Like, and every one of these dudes is the same way. Is you'll get as much from them on a quality human being, personality, like-minded. It's nice to talk to people who think like us level, as you do fucking put your hand here and shut up. I don't care if it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right because you suck, not because it doesn't feel right. Do it. Oh, look, it worked. Right? Like, so these guys, all of these guys, and anybody who's worth a shit teaching can do it to tailor to whatever it is that you need as far as a personality or a, analogy. Like, oh, this isn't, you're not understanding what I'm saying. Let me shift gears and come at you from another angle. And these guys are all real good at this stuff. So, Jeff, you're on the right track for sure. And, oh, cool. Kate is listening. That's awesome. I'm glad to see that as well in the chat.
Yeah, it's a family affair. we've got a lot of moral support, man. What can I say?
That's awesome, man. It's awesome.
Where it starts.
Yeah. Yeah. So, let's talk for just as little bit of a second as we can about gear. Not like I don't fucking want to talk guns all night because I'm sick of doing it. But what are you running for handguns, support gear, civ classes, LE classes, and a rifle? And I'm pretty sure the answer is you could just duck and I could look behind you and figure it out. But
Yeah, it's some of my toys. Yeah. No, so I'm a Glock guy, so I'm running, I teach my civ classes in what I carry. I run all my open enrollment courses from how I carry the gun. Right now I'm running Gen 3 Glock 19, modded out a little bit, not too Gucci, RMR, so we got a dot on that. I'm in a Tentacle, Velo, however they say that. But I need to get their new generation because that body contour wedge looks a lot nicer than the original hump, and I like the original hump. So that's how I'm rocking guns on concealed carry gear right now. Duty guns and what I teach with. I'm a Glock guy, so I'm in a 17 MOS Gen 5 with a RMR on that beast. That's kicking out of a Safariland ALS rig. I'm a Glock 45 on duty. Not by choice. I tried to finagle my new chief into letting me roll with my dot gun, but no luck yet. But I'm working on it.
Wait.
I keep it simple.
You mean a G21 or you mean a G45 short slide long grip 9mm?
G45, yeah. That was purchased prior to my arrival. Not that it's a bad gun. Well, it's an okay. I just would have rather seen them get something in MOS configuration. That way, when they make the transition or decide to give it a shot, they would ease that quite a bit on the guys, as opposed to now having to send the slides out, get them milled, which we can do, but it's always just easier to be set for it already. Rifle-wise, love my Noveskis. I'm a Noveski whore on that. My primary there is just a Mark 18, so running a little shorty, Aimpoint T2. Cloud Defensive Owl. That's been running that light for about 6 months. It's my new light baby on that beast. Once my new can comes out of jail, I got a Da Vinci arm suppressor coming on, gonna tack onto that, but it's getting ready to enter jail, so we'll see. We were talking before we got started here how long my sentence is going to be on that, so we'll see. But yeah, man, I keep it simple. I think a real quick way to tell how long somebody's been in the game is take a look at their gear, and if it's got crap hanging off on rail space and every widget, it might be towards the beginning of their career.
Yep.
Once they figure it out, everything starts coming back off that gear. And I look back at old photos of me, even operationally stuff, my old SWAT setups, and I'm like, man, what was I thinking? Like, dude, I bolted everything in the sun I could find onto it, and every possible accessory and every pouch and bit of gear, and now I'm like as slick as I possibly can be, and low pro, and I got an aid in however fast I can possibly move, and it ain't that fast, but I keep it pretty simple.
Awesome. What about that? Oh, help me. IC13 or IC13 or whatever, that really cool inverted death rig.
The invert. Yeah, it's up over. I got 3 of them hanging up there. Yeah, man, slick little bandolier. I run that as my patrol rifle grab and go. If you ever get a chance to check those guys out, they're a Central Pennsylvania-based company. Really innovative products. They're stitched and made right here in the U.S. Gives you the opportunity to run a couple rifle mags if you got it as a grab and go. But they're full molly, so you can set them up however you want. And if you don't want to have it, you talk to guys over at IC13, they have people that set them up for, taking hikes with the family, and they got a water bottle pouch and a pouch for a camera or dog treats or leash or whatever they got. But they're slick little products.
Yeah, that's one of those things where it's like, I looked at you and I went, what the hell is that? And I literally, I've never seen it before, and it's a pretty cool product. I'm getting the link right now so we can throw it in the show notes, because it's a unique enough product. Not that I'm like product whoring for anybody, but it's one of those things that you won't see anywhere else, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and it's made. It's the quality of manufacturing that they put on it really makes a big difference. And it takes product. It's not like a bandolier is a new piece of gear that's been around for forever and a day, but just kind of an interesting spin on it. And instead of the afterthought that most bandoliers are from the companies that do produce them, this is purpose built to do exactly what does a great job. So really, really well made product. Good dudes over there.
Awesome. Really cool. And then while we're on the gear subject, let's talk med stuff. I know you're carrying medical.
Yeah. So my EDC wise, I always train guys, if you take a look at your EDC, I like to use the terminology find, fight, fix. Right. So I want to have tools on my body to be able to do those 3 things. And I want to be able to find them. So for me, that's an illumination tool. So that's a light. That's always having a light on you. Running a Streamlight HLX right now. Been running that. They're 1,000 lume. I just swapped it out to 18650 batteries though, instead of constantly burning my CR123s. That fighting and fixing, man. So you got guns and blades, and then fixing. That's a multi-tool to fix little stuff and to fix boo-boos on you. So I carry the ITS pocket, their pocket kit. That's got a full-size soft tee, some combat gauze, and a pair of nitrile gloves that I'll throw out as soon as I tear the packaging up. Because if I'm using it, I'm probably using it on me or family if I get to the one that's carrying. So that rides in the back pocket. Med kit, that's on me. So that's an EDC thing. That's that old, if it's not on you, it doesn't exist mantra. And then full trauma kit in the all over the houses. So I'm a North American Rescue guy, so I kick their products, their kits and their individual component stuff in most of my med gear. So they've been real good for me. I know I just mentioned the other tourniquet, and then I say I'm a North American Rescue guy, but that just happens to be the TQ that's in that kit that I carry on my person.
You mean you can't just use your belt?
Yeah, no, shockingly enough, no. Yeah, no, man, and I tell guys too. So belts. The great tourniquet wars, right? So everybody looks at it and wants to do belts. I was doing some corporate training a couple weeks ago. I have another session coming up in a few weeks, and that's, you hear it all the time. Yeah, we see it on TV all the time, and I go, right, and it doesn't work then either. So yeah, you got to use a reputable belt, or a reputable tourniquet. I tell guys, if you stick to TCCC guidelines, you're solid. They just added a couple more tourniquets. When I coach cops on this. When we incorporate med training into some of the courses that I do. Just as most of them had something, so I'm not giving them a full med class. I'm just adding that component in to get them reps in relevant circumstances. I always tell them, man, you can run some of your alternate tourniquets, but my personal opinion, if it hasn't cleared TCCC, and it's not an approved tourniquet through them, it's not something I'm going to carry if I have the choice. Otherwise, I have the ability. So, I'll out it. It's the SWAT and the rats. That's the SWAT T and the rats are the two biggies that are really, really compact and easy to carry. And I tell guys, they're certainly better than a belt and they're better than nothing. But you're in my experience anyway, you're better off with something with a harder mechanical connection in the CAT and the soft T or any of the other. I think TCCC just authorized 3 additional TQs in their latest revision, but they're all mechanical based tourniquets. So, yeah, and then you piss off all the guys that are SWAT T and rats devotees, but not that I put enough on to be an authoritative figure on this, but I certainly talk to enough trauma docs and enough cats overseas or medics and played the games overseas, and I'll trust their opinion on it. They got a lot more live deployments than I do in putting them on, and that's what they tell me, and I go, hey man, sounds good to me. So the dudes I trust, that's their words too, so I kind of stick with it.
Awesome. So real quick, before we got one more question in chat, but before I hit that, you've been doing some work in the martial arts realm. And by doing some work, I mean you've been like getting your ass rolled around on a mat with Eric for fucking getting beat up.
Yeah, man.
So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I am a casual practitioner, and if Eric watches this, he's gonna laugh. He's on live. He'd be in the comments and be like, "Wait, when were you there last?" And I'd say, "Last week, man. Leave me alone." Doing jujitsu. So I've been over at Berks County Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And over at their school for about 2 years. I got introduced to jiu-jitsu all the way back in the mid-90s in the first unit I was in the Marine Corps. Long before it was a fad thing. There was no, UFC was just coming around and wasn't really well known. And I got kind of introduced to it. I had a team leader who was, at the time, a high-level practitioner, which was super, super rare. And, flirted with it over the years and then just decided to roll back into it a little bit more consistently, a little bit more aggressively. And been a cool journey. It's really cool to going back to being really crappy at something again. You can get you can lose the mindset real fast when 95% of the time on the range, I'm the dude behind the line that eyes are on me and I'm supposed to be the expert here. And you can kind of get seduced by that, and then you go do something, a new discipline for me like jiu-jitsu, and I roll in and I survey the Serengeti and the scene, and I'm like, I got like 80% of these fools, and this is going to be no problem. And then watch, a little 155-pound, 17-year-old kid just ball me up. It's a cool, humbling experience. It actually taught me a lot more about body movement and movement in general as it applies to all levels of force. Really a lot more than I was prepared. And I'm in a cool situation where the owner of the school I train at, he and I trade training services. So he's got the harder job, him training me in jiu-jitsu, me training him in firearms and shooting. So we've been able to develop a pretty cool relationship there and work that out. But yeah, man, I tell people it's the biggest gap in most people's defensive game. Because it is an ego check. You're going to go and if you go to an art or you go to a school, and for me, I think jiu-jitsu is probably the best option out there just because you're facing live resistance, which is unique compared to most other programs where you never face live resistance in your training. You're going to go and you're going to get stomped, and you're going to get taught that you're not as big and tough. I jumped into it as rough tumble, Marine, cop for, at that point, 15, 16 years, SWAT guy, no problem. I didn't lose fights in the street, all the tough talk, this, that. And you go in there and you get taught real quick that there's a whole lot more to it. And just Mongo Smash isn't going to fix every problem. So it's been a blast. It sucks and is awesome all at the same time, if that makes sense. And I think anybody new to jiu-jitsu knows that exact feeling.
That's awesome. So, one last question from the chat for you. How does law enforcement, I guess we're going to ask you, you're going to speak for all of law enforcement now. So you are in charge. You get to speak for the entirety of cops everywhere.
Get my badge here and pin it on.
Yes.
Big display. Go.
Yes.
What do we got?
How does law enforcement view civilian self-defense shootings?
Yep.
And how do you feel other officers?
Yeah, I'm going to answer that with a phrase you've heard, Kent, and that is 10-10-80. And what I would mean by that, I apply 10-10-80 to everything. 10%, if we're talking about job performance, 10% are awesome, 10% are terrible, 80% are somewhere in the middle. When I apply that, what I would apply that to in this context is you're going to have 10% of your cops are going to feel really strongly supportive of it. 10% are going to feel really strongly opposed. The more the government will save you, and that's not your job to shoot the intruder. You're just supposed to cower in the corner and wait for us, the knights in blue, to come and save you. And 80% of the officers out there, somewhere in the middle. If I had to put a feel on it, I would say they're generally more supportive than less. The scales are still tipped a little bit more in the supportive column, but as far as really, really deeply dedicated to person's individual liberties and right to self-defense, particularly as it pertains to firearms, I think it probably breaks down in roughly those numbers. That's why you kind of see that in actions when you talk about how officers deal with encountering firearms that are being lawfully carried in traffic stops or in mere encounters and things like that. I was always one that my standard go-to line was, "Hey man, thanks for being part of the solution, not part of the problem." I dug it. If somebody made a notification to me, which they don't have to do in the state of Pennsylvania, but if they did, I wasn't one of those guys, but I knew those officers that then decided it was going to be their turn. I have to disarm you for my safety and disassemble your gun. And that's all BS and nonsense, man. I was always like, hey, cool, awesome. But that's unfortunately not everybody's opinion out there. So yeah, man, I put it at 10-10-80. 10 good, 10 bad, 80% somewhere in the middle.
Really cool. So we're coming up on that time where we got to let you do your plugs, let you tell us where folks can find you, all that good stuff, and talk about training calendars. And then TJ and I will do our wrap up stuff. So be the 2-minute salesman, if you will, please. He doesn't want to do that because he hates to be like the hacky guy, but sell yourself a little bit. Where can they find you?
Yeah, hacky guy. So check me out. You can see all my course catalog, training course on Vigr Training. It's vigrtraining.com. Same on Instagram, same on Facebook. You can follow my endeavors there. As far as some sponsors help me out this year, some really, really good companies out there. Wiseman Company were great guys that helped out. Lunar Concepts, IC13, IR Tools, TA Targets, my steel guys. So best steel I've ever used, hands down, guys. If you need steel, catch the cats at TA Targets. You will not get better product. Innovative, durable, greatest customer service, greatest product out there. Hands down, bar none. Buy yourself your forever target. Don't wait. Straight to TA Targets. Locks Hair Wax. Got to keep the threads looking real nice. U.S. Armor on the law enforcement side. Tactical Wear Online on the LE side. Magpul hooked me up pretty good this year. So shout out to Magpul. They were solid dudes. And vigrtraining.com and Vigr Training for both Facebook, Instagram. And that's how you grab me.
Very, very cool. Well, honored that you'd be willing to give us, an hour and a half of your time. It's really a privilege for me to be able to bring people on here that I've actually had the pleasure of training with in person. I could say nothing better than to say that my wife or sibling or son or whoever would come to you for training with my full blessing, and I would trust anybody with you. So my best and most respect to you and to what you're doing. And it's nice to be quote unquote friendly competitors in the training world here locally instead of fucking like dickheads. Like you've got such a great company, and you do.
It's a big ocean. There's lots of fish in it.
Yeah,
so there's absolutely no reason. Yeah, that was Seeker said that to me early on in mentoring and training with him. He's like, man, there's no reason to be an asshole in the industry. We're all out. If you got dudes putting on good stuff, be a good citizen, be a good guy. So I appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah, you're good in our book. You're more than welcome to come back anytime you want. And we'll keep you abreast of what we got going on here. And thanks so much for your time. If you're hearing the sound of our voice on podcast or whatever like that, that's Phil Groff from Vigr Training. Hit up his links and give him a follow. Give him whatever you can to help him. And if you got some money burning a hole in your pocket, before you come see me, go see him and learn how to put some beans outside a blaster, because he's well worth your time. TJ, what do you got, man? Let's wrap this thing up.
Yeah, that's about it. Kent, Phil, thank you again for coming onto the show. We really enjoyed having you. Certainly been an educational experience, and thank you for entertaining the questions in chat. If you're new to the podcast, by all means, feel free to like, share, and subscribe this podcast. Tell your friends if you're hearing about this or hearing our voices on your favorite podcast player. Be sure to subscribe there as well. Also, tell your friends. We'd love to have more people participating in the live chat and asking their questions and getting educated along with us. If you have questions, and you aren't participating in the live chat, feel free to email Kent and myself at slingandleadpodcast@gmail.com. While you're at it, why don't you head on over to rightonoptics.com and check out everything that they have to offer. Pistol red dots, variable power optics, binoculars, all sorts of fancy, fantastic optics for all of your shooting needs. At this point, code TRamsey will get you 15% off at checkout. Until we see each other again, God bless you all. Take care of each other. And get out and shoot.
Thanks, everybody.